I mustache you a question. Want to learn how to deploy computer vision apps? Let's do it. What's happening, guys? My name's Nicholas Renaud, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at how you can deploy your very own computer vision app. Let's take a deeper look into what we're going to be going through. So in this video, we're going to start off with a pre-built computer vision app, and I'll link in the description below where you can go and download this. So we'll prepare that for deployment. We're then going to take that app and deploy it to a standalone site, and then we're actually going to test it out. So we'll be able to see real-time detections made by our computer vision app. Let's take a look as to how this is all going to work. So the first thing that we're going to do is set up the necessary files that we need for deployment. So specifically, we're going to set up a .env file and a manifest.yml file. So this is going to allow us to deploy. Then we're going to deploy to our cloud service. So this is going to allow us to host our entire application. And then last but not least, we're going to be able to test it out using the pre-provided route. Ready to do it? Let's get to it. So in order to deploy our computer vision app, we need to start off with a computer vision app. So in terms of this video, we're going to be working with our real-time sign language detection app that we built using React and Tensorflow.Js. Now, if you want to go and take a look at how we built this app, I'll include a link somewhere up above, but also in the description below. But again, these same steps are going to apply if you're building this or deploying your own custom computer vision app. Now, again, in order to start out with our app, we're going to be grabbing this repository first up. So everything that you're going to need is inside this repo. And specifically, we're going to be using the real-time sign language detection with TF.js repository. Now, in order to grab this link, you just need to go to github.com//nicknocknack/real-time sign language detection with TF.js. Bit of a mouthful. But again, I'll include links to this and all of the dependencies as well as this repo, plus the completed repo in the description. So first up, what we're going to do is grab this link and copy it, and then open up a new command prompt. And then we're going to navigate into a directory that we want to put this app into. So in this case, I'm going to put it into my D drive. And then in order to clone this, what we're going to be doing is using the Git Clone method. Now again, if you're doing this on your own app, you don't need to clone this repository. You can just work with your own app or your own developed application. So what we're first going to do though is we're going to clone our app. So we're going to type in git clone and then clone this down. So this is going to take this repository that we're just looking at in GitHub and clone it into our D drive. So let's go on ahead and clone it. Now again, this repository is a little bit big, so it might take a couple of minutes to clone down, but let's run it and then we'll be right back in a sec. So that's our repository clone. So what we can do is cd into it. So if we just type in cd real-time sign language detection with TF.js, and then if we take a look inside that, you can see that we've got a bunch of stuff, but specifically we're interested in this folder here. So React Computer Vision Template. So that's where we built up our entire real-time computer vision app. So if we jump into that, then what we can do is open it up inside of a code editor. So for this, we're going to be using VS Code. So we can just type in code dot, and this will open it up inside of our very own code editor. Now you can see that this is sort of a pretty standard React app. So we've got a bunch of stuff in there. What we're first up going to do is we're going to update our README. So we've got a bunch of steps, and this is going to form the basis of our to-do list. So in terms of how we need to go about deploying our app, there's a couple of things that we need to do. So first up, we're going to be deploying to IBM Cloud, and specifically we're going to be using a service called Cloud Foundry. Just makes it super easy to go and deploy apps like this. So in order to actually go and use IBM Cloud Foundry, we need to first up have the IBM Cloud CLI as well as Cloud Foundry installed. So to install those, I've got two links. So if you actually go to these, so the first one is going to allow you to install the IBM Cloud CLI. The second one is going to allow you to install Cloud Foundry. So if we actually go and take a look at those, this is the first link. And if you just go down here, there's a link here which says IBM Cloud CLI Releases. So if you actually select that link, this is going to have all the pre-built installers. So you just need to click the one that you need. So in this case, we've got Mac OS, Windows, Windows 32, Linux, and Power. So you've got all the CLIs that you need there. So you can basically interact with IBM Cloud from your command line. Now the next dependency that you're going to need is IBM Cloud Foundry. So if you just go to this link, so it's going to be Cloud Foundry /CLI/wiki/v6 CLI installation guide. it's got all of the installation steps and the installers that you're going to need for this. So basically the IBM Cloud CLI allows you to work with the IBM Cloud environment from your command line, and Cloud Foundry is what actually allows you to go on ahead and deploy your app. Now in this case, I've already got them pre-installed, so we're going to run through this, but again, I'll include links to all of this stuff in the description. So let's take a look at our next sort of steps. So the first one is Git Clone our existing repo. So we've done that, but again, if you're using your own custom app, you'd basically replace your app with that step. So you don't need to clone anything down, you've already got your app. The next thing that we're going to do, and again, this is dependent on, or this is specific to the app that we've cloned down, we're just going to delete this package.lock file and delete this yarn.lock file. So we don't need these for when we actually go and deploy. So let's go on ahead and do that. So if we right-click package.lock and hit delete, we can move that to the recycling bin. And again, we can select yarn.lock, hit delete, move that to the recycling bin. Cool, we can now mark that step as done. Now the next thing that we need to do is really start getting into our deployment steps. So in order to actually go and deploy this on IBM Cloud Foundry, we need to set up 3 new files. These are a .env file, a .cfignore, so this one here, and a manifest.yml file. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So those 3 files are going to be what we actually need to go and deploy our model. So our .env file acts like an environment file. So basically this allows us to host variables that our app needs in order to run. Now specifically, we're going to be using this to hold the link to our Tensorflow.Js trained model. So when we actually deploy this in the real-time sign language detection video, or when we actually went and built it in the real-time sign language detection video, we created a model.json file. So basically our env file is going to hold a URL to that model.json file. Now, if you've gone and trained your own custom model, this is where you'd go and replace it. Now, the next thing that we need to do is actually create a cfignore file. So this is basically sort of like a git ignore file and allows us to ignore certain files when we push to Cloud Foundry. And our manifest.yml file basically just contains our deployment instructions. So it's how and what we actually want to deploy. So let's go on ahead and first up create our .env file, our .cfignore file, and our manifest.yml, and then we'll make the update to it. So we're just going to create 3 new files inside of our root directory. So those are our 3 new files. We've got a .cfignore, a .env, and a manifest.yml file. So those are those created. Now we actually need to put some stuff into it. So let's first start off with our .env file. Now, whenever you're defining env variables or environment variables in a React app, you need to prefix them with React app, and then you can name them whatever you want. In this case, we're going to name our variable model URL. So that's our environment variable defined. Now we actually need to paste in our URL. Now, when we actually went and cloned or committed our repo, we actually had the URL inside of our app.js file, and specifically around line 20, you can see that we've got this URL here. So we're just going to cut this URL and delete our string tags, and then we're going to paste it into here. So basically, this means that when we actually go and deploy it, if ever we changed our URL or we built a new model and we wanted to roll it out, we can basically change our environment variables from within our deployment platform. We don't need to go and redeploy our entire app. We can just change that link and it's going to be able to make that update really easily. So we can save that. And then what we're going to do is inside of our app.js file, we just need to make a change here. So right now we've taken that link out. We need to include a pointer back to it. So in order to do that, we just type in process.env and then the name of our variable. So in this case, it's React model URL. So we can paste that in there. Now, we've made a critical change there. So ideally, what we want to do is make sure that our app still runs. So in order to do that, we first up need to install our dependencies, and then we need to start up our app. So in order to install our dependencies, we can just open up a new terminal and then type in npm install. And then as soon as we run this, this will install all of the dependencies that we actually need for our model. So if we just run that, this is going to take a couple of minutes, but we'll be right back. Okay, so those are our dependencies installed, and you can now see that we've got a node modules folder that contains all of our dependencies. Now what we want to do is we just want to make sure that our app's still running. So in order to do this, we can just type in npm start, and this should ideally start up our app, and we'll be able to see if it's still running. And again, when we're starting up this React app, it's going to open to localhost 3000. Now, it might take a little bit of time to start because it's going to compile, but as soon as it does, we'll be able to test out how well it's actually detecting stuff. All right, so you can see our app is up, and ideally, we should be able to see some detections. Let's give it some time, and you can see it's detecting hello, I love you, thank you, yes, and no. Now, I've got some code as well that makes these detections and the visualizations a little bit more accurate. Let me know in the descriptions below if you want access to that. But you can see for now that our app's running successfully, so we can actually stop our app and then actually get on with the rest of our deployment steps. So we can stop that. And then the next thing that we need to do, so we've already defined our environment file, we've updated our pointer here. We need to go on ahead and update our manifest.yml. So our manifest.yml basically contains all the deployment information that we need for our model. So it includes what we want to name our app, how much memory to allocate, how much disk to allocate, as well as where our app is stored. So let's go on ahead and define this, and then we'll take a step back and take a look at what we've done. So that's our manifest.yml file defined. Now keep in mind when you go and deploy this app, there is obviously a cost involved because you're effectively hosting an application. Now in this particular case, we're going to be using a reasonable amount of memory and a reasonable amount of disk quota. So just something to keep in mind. Now let's actually step through our manifest file. So first up, we're defining our applications included and the path. So specifically, we're basically stating that our path is the current place that we're currently at, so our root folder. Then we're defining the name of our app. So this is going to be the name when we actually go and deploy it. So in this case, it's going to be TensorFlow app. Then we're defining our build pack. So in this particular case, we're using React, but React is sort of backed by Node.js. So that's what we've actually defined there. So SDK for Node.js. Then we've gone and specified our memory. So in this case, we're saying that we want a gig of memory. Now, TensorFlow.js apps tend to be pretty memory hungry. So we're going to allocate a reasonable amount there. We've also defined how many instances we want. So if we wanted to deploy multiple containers of our app, this is where we'd be able to define that. So say, for example, we wanted 3 or 4 deployments, we could change that there. We can also specify whether or not we want a random route or not. So this will just randomly allocate a route. We don't want that. We actually want it to be called TensorFlow app. And then we've also specified how much disk we want. So we want a gig there as well. So that's our manifest.yml file defined. Now the last thing that we need to do is define our CF ignore. So let's go on ahead and do that. So that's our .cf ignore file defined. So basically the first exclusion that I've got is this Terser Webpack plugin. For some reason it does cause a couple of bugs, so we just exclude that. It all runs successfully still. We're also excluding all of our node modules as well as our environment file. So that's pretty much all of the main files defined. So let's go back to our README and effectively our to-do list. We've now created our .env file. So remember, that's where we created our model URL, our .cf ignore, and we've also created our manifest.yml file. So we can now mark those as done. What we've also done is we've also updated our model pointer. So this is what we did here. So we can mark that as done. And we've also deleted our package.lock file and our yarn.lock file, and we've also run an install. So we've pretty much done the majority of steps. So that's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 done. Now the next thing that we need to do is create a production build of our app. Now in order to do that, we just need to run the command npm run build. So let's do that. Okay, so that's our production build done, and you can see that we've now got a build folder with all of our static site stuff. So we can now mark that step as done. So this basically gives us a static production build. It's just going to perform way faster. Now we're actually up to our deployment steps. So again, in order to do this, you're going to need to have an IBM Cloud account. Now, if you don't have one, just go to cloud.ibm.com. You can set it all up there. In this case, we've already got one set up, and we've already got our IBM Cloud CLI and Cloud Foundry installed. So you need to go through these steps to do this. So the first thing that we're going to do is log into the IBM Cloud CLI. So again, inside of a terminal, we're just going to type in IBM Cloud, log in. Now, what you do is you'd hit enter. It's going to prompt you for your password and username, or username and password. Just plug those in and then you'll be authenticated. Okay, so we're now authenticated. Now I've got multiple accounts under this, so I just need to select the one that I want to use. You probably won't need to do this. And then in my particular case, I've already got the region that I want specified. So I've got AUCID. So if you don't have the region specified, you just need to type in IBM Cloud, target, -r, and then the region. So in this case, I will say, for example, we wanted to target AUCID again. We just type in IBM Cloud, target, -r, and then AUCID. And you can see there that we've now gone and switched to our region, AUCID, and you can see that our region's specified there. So we're looking good there. Now the next thing that we want to do is target Cloud Foundry. So in order to do that, we just need to type in IBM Cloud, target, --cf. So let's do that. So that's now going to target Cloud Foundry. And in this case, I need to select the organization. So I'm just going to select one. And now we've targeted Cloud Foundry, and you can see that we've got our endpoint here. Now the last thing that we really need to do to deploy our app, or the second last thing, is actually just type in IBM Cloud CF push, and then the name of our app. So in our case, it's going to be IBM Cloud CF push, and then TensorFlow app. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we just type it in there, so you can see we've got IBM Cloud CF push TensorFlow app. So this is now going to build our application and go and deploy it into IBM Cloud. Then the last thing that we need to go and do is actually go and create our environment variables inside of IBM Cloud. So remember, we created them in .env. We just need to actually do this when we've actually deployed our app. And that should be about it. But let's let this deploy and then we can take a look. All right, so that's our app now deployed. Now in this particular case, you're going to get this route. So you can see that we've got TensorFlow app.aucid, so our region.mybluemix.net. Now in this case, it says it's running, but we're probably going to have some issues because we don't actually have our environment variables set up. So in order to do this, we just need to go to IBM Cloud and actually load those variables in. Now, just a quick recap. So far what we've done is we've gone to IBM Cloud, we've logged in through our CLI, we've targeted Cloud Foundry using IBM Cloud target --cf. And remember, if we wanted to change our region, it's just IBM Cloud target -r, and then in this case we targeted AUCID, and then the last command that we ran was IBM Cloud CF push app name. So in this case, the app name that we deployed was TensorFlow app. So those 5 commands allow you to go on ahead and deploy. Now once we did that, we got our route rendered back, and in this case it says it's running. The last and final thing that we need to do is just go and define those variables. So let's go on ahead and do that. So in order to do that, we just need to go to cloud.ibm.com, and then we can log in. So in this case, we're going to log in. And once we're logged in, we should come to this dashboard. But what we actually want is we want our services. So to access that, you just need to go to our resources list. So this button over here. And from here, you're going to be able to see all the resources within your IBM Cloud environment. Now, I've got a bunch in here, but specifically the ones that you want to take a look for are these Cloud Foundry apps here. So if you open this up, you can see that there's a bunch of apps deployed. The one that we're most interested in is our TensorFlow app. So as soon as we've gone and deployed it, you'll be able to see it here. So if we select TensorFlow app, you can see it's running, but right now if we actually go and visit our app URL, we should get a bunch of bugs. So again, we don't actually have our URL defined. So it's actually saying, please provide a URL or IO handler that loads our model. So we can fix this pretty easily. We just need to go to runtime over here. So you can see it says runtime, and then if you select environment variables, we can go and define some environment variables. So if we just hit add, and if we go back to our app, what we can do is go to our env file, copy this variable, paste it in here. So basically what we're doing is we're just creating our environment variables inside of our deployment environment. So if we go and define that name there, so in this case I've just typed in React model URL, and then if we go and type in our link as well, so we just need this. So we can paste that in, hit save, and you can see that we've now got our model URL. So at the moment it says it's running, but our app will probably take a little bit of time to start up. So you can see it's starting, and as soon as it's started, we're actually going to be able to test it out. So as soon as that turns to running, we should be able to run with it. So let's give it a sec. Perfect, so it looks like our app's now up and running, so let's go and try it out. So we can just hit visit app URL, and it looks like it's running. So you can see that we're now at this URL here, so TensorFlow app .ausid.mybluemix.net. So again, if we go and try to make detections, we're successfully making our detections and we've successfully deployed our model. So again, we've got yes, no, thank you, I love you, hello, let's go and move it around, and hello. And that about wraps it up. So we've now successfully gone and deployed our real-time computer vision app. So if we go and take a look back at our steps, we went and made sure that we had our dependencies installed, so specifically the IBM Cloud CLI and Cloud Foundry. In our particular case, we already had our app built, so we went and cloned it down and we deleted our package.lock and yarn.lock files. Then we went and created 3 new files, our environment config, our cfignore, and our manifest. We updated our model pointers, so remember we went and changed this here to process.env.react.app_model. And then we went and deleted our packages, we went and built our production app, and then we went and used these 4 commands. So IBM Cloud Login, IBM Cloud Target CF, IBM Cloud Target-R AUSID to change our region, and then last but not least, IBM Cloud CF Push TensorFlow app, or whatever our app name is. Then all we had to do is log in and create our environment variables. So we remember we went once we got into our app, we just went to runtime, environment variables, and we redefined it there. And so if we wanted to change our model later on, or we wanted to redeploy a model and change that, all we need to do is change this URL here. So if we just go back to our to-do list, so we've now gone and created our environment variables, and we've also gone in and deployed our app successfully. And that about wraps it up. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and tick that bell so you get notified of when I release future videos. And let me know how you went about deploying your real-time computer vision app. And if you did deploy one, by all means, share the link in the comments below. I'd love to see what you built. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.